Babylon. A city that became a legend and turned to ruins before it was even founded. How is that possible? Let us race across 1,000 years of history and try to resolve this contradiction. We will tell the story of Babylon's greatest rulers, Hammurabi and Nebuchadnezzar II, how the Tower of Babel was built, and what the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis really were. We will soar above the Ishtar Gate and touch the lives of ordinary Babylonians, whose lives were governed by laws that Europe would not match for another 3,500 years. Searching for the origins of Babylon is like peering into fog. We do not know who founded the legendary city or when. The first written mention of Babylon dates to the 23rd century BCE, during the reign of Sargon, of Akkad's grandson. Back then, the city was called Kardingir, which in Sumerian meant Gate of God. The more familiar name emerged in the Akkadian language. Locals called the city Bab-ilu, which also translates as Gate of God. Gradually, Akkadian displaced Sumerian, and the name stuck. From there, it passed into ancient Greek and took on the sound the world still knows today, Babylon. The history of Babylon begins after the fall of the Sumero-Akkadian kingdom around 2000 BCE. Babylon was seized by nomadic Amorite tribes. Roughly a century later, an Amorite chieftain named Sumu-Abum founded the first Babylonian dynasty. Historians call the era of this dynasty's rule the Old Babylonian period. Upon becoming ruler of Babylon, Sumu-Abum erected defensive walls around the city, dug canals to supply it with water, and built new temples. Then Sumu-Abum launched military campaigns. He captured and destroyed the neighboring city of Kazalu. With the rulers of Kish and Sippar, he formed an alliance. By the end of his life, Sumu-Abum had expanded his domain to include the cities of Dilbat and Kutha. And so, from an unremarkable little town, Babylon transformed into the capital of a future celebrated power. Let us return to the Sumero-Akkadian kingdom and examine the conditions in which Babylon existed before its rise. The Sumero-Akkadian kingdom was a mighty state in the territory of ancient Mesopotamia. At its peak, it stretched from the coast of the Persian Gulf to the north of Mesopotamia. The kingdom endured for 1 century, from the late 22nd to the late 21st century BCE. During this period, Mesopotamia was concluding the early Bronze Age, and people were transitioning from copper tools and weapons to bronze. Babylon, at that time, was an insignificant city within the Sumero-Akkadian kingdom. The empire began to crumble toward the end of the 21st century BCE. Amorite tribes constantly attacked, leaving nothing in their wake. The devastated locals rose up in hungry revolts. In the south, the Elamites rebelled, demanding independence. The Sumero-Akkadian kingdom weakened and ultimately fragmented into separate states. After this, Mesopotamia became an arena for endless wars. The main feuding centers were the city-states of Isin and Larsa. In addition, the kingdoms of Assyria and Mari formed in the north, Eshnunna in the east, and Elam in the south. Individual states could form alliances, but more often they clashed with one another over expanding their borders. Since none of them held a decisive advantage, the whole situation resembled chaos. Later, the Babylonian king Hammurabi would become the one to unite all the warring states of Mesopotamia into a single power, the Babylonian kingdom. Hammurabi came from the first Babylonian dynasty and was the 6th ruler of Babylon after Sumu-Abum. The exact meaning of his name is unknown. Some scholars read it as Hammurabi, meaning the ancestor is great, others as Hammurapi, meaning the ancestor is a healer. Hammurabi was born in the early 19th century BCE. Around the same time, on the other side of the world, in prehistoric Britain, the construction of Stonehenge was completed. Hammurabi inherited a kingdom stretching from Sippar to Marad in what is now modern-day Iraq. At the time, this was not the most powerful state. Far greater threats were posed by the neighboring kingdoms of Larsa, Eshnunna, Elam, and the realm of Shamshi-Adad I. By warring with some and cooperating with others, Hammurabi, by the end of his life, had subjugated all the lands of Mesopotamia. But let us take it in order. In his early years of rule, Hammurabi apparently did not wage wars of conquest. Upon ascending the throne, the young king first forgave the debts of all his subjects. Over the following years, he built and restored temples, strengthened the city walls, and dug canals. Only in his 7th year of rule did he go to war with the cities of Isin and Uruk, conquering them at once. Isin and Uruk were then under the control of Rimsin, the ruler of Larsa. Yet Rimsin did not respond to Hammurabi with war, ceding him 2 important cities. This may have been because, before the attack, Hammurabi had formed an alliance with Shamshi-Adad I, the leader of the Upper Mesopotamian kingdom. Rim-Sin apparently decided to prepare and start a war later. A year later, Rim-Sin sent troops against Hammurabi and reclaimed Isin and Uruk. From then on, a long peace was established between them. Hammurabi would expand his borders in other directions. In his 11th year of rule, Hammurabi rejected a proposal for alliance from the king of Eshnunna. Instead, he allied with Shamshi-Adad I, who controlled all the major cities of Upper Mesopotamia. At the time, this was the most powerful ally available. Hammurabi's decisive, victorious campaigns began only in his 30th year of rule. He then defeated the combined forces of Eshnunna, Malgium, and Elam. After this triumph, Hammurabi declared for the first time that the borders of the Babylonian kingdom encompassed all the lands of Lower Mesopotamia. Such a declaration meant that Hammurabi no longer recognized the authority of Rim-Sin, and war with Larsa was inevitable. Hammurabi marched his troops to the walls of Larsa. Rim-Sin held out under siege for a month, but was ultimately defeated. His subsequent fate is unknown. From the vanquished king, Hammurabi inherited the title Father of the Amorites. After the death of Shamshi-Adad, Hammurabi's ally, the kingdom of Upper Mesopotamia, collapsed. The states of Assyria and Mari gained independence, and in his subsequent campaigns, Hammurabi subdued them. In his 38th year of rule, Hammurabi captured Eshnunna and repelled the onslaught of nomadic tribes. After this, all of Mesopotamia fell under his control. Hammurabi was a masterful negotiator and strategist. He chose his allies carefully and waged war successfully even far from his homeland. These skills helped him transform Babylon from an unknown town into the capital of a celebrated kingdom. But this was only one side of his extraordinary personality. Hammurabi also became one of the first lawmakers in history. This brought Babylon to its golden age. Having consolidated his power, Hammurabi launched judicial reforms. Under his direction, a code of laws was compiled that defined the rights and responsibilities of the Babylonian kingdom's inhabitants. The laws were carved into a diorite stele, crowned with an image of Hammurabi and Shamash, the god of the sun and justice. Hammurabi wielded absolute power. He was revered on par with a god who rules over society and establishes its laws. In earlier times, things had been different. Rulers had to take the opinions of the high priesthood into account in order to maintain their position. Babylonian society consisted of 3 estates with unequal rights. The majority of inhabitants were free people. They were called Avilum, meaning man. They lived in communities and owned their own land. Hammurabi largely did not interfere in their lives. He even ensured that officials did not seize communal lands from the people. Nevertheless, Awilum paid taxes. The second estate comprised the freed dependents, or mushkenum, meaning one who prostrates himself. Most often, they came from palace or temple slaves. Though free people and even nomads could be among them, mushkenum had no roots in any community or had voluntarily severed ties with one. Some gave up their land after going bankrupt. Others did so seeking advancement in service. Mushkenum held land on royal territory and served the government. Their activities were managed by city administrators, many of whom were themselves mushkenum. This estate could simultaneously include both lesser status farmers and